In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Law, I wish to state that on February 5th, 2016, the notice of this meeting of the Upper Township Committee was posted on the official Township bulletin board, mailed to the Cape May County Gazette, the Atlantic City Press, the Ocean City Sentinel Ledger, the Herald Times, and followed by the Township Clerk. Tonight's meeting is being video recorded up until the closed session portion of this meeting and will be available on UTTV Channel 97 and on the Upper Township website. I hereby direct that this announcement be made a part of the minutes of this meeting. I would ask all to rise for the salute to the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Barbara, can we call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Pearson?
Here.
Mr. Young?
Here.
Mayor Plummer?
Here.
And members are present.
All right, would someone like to make approval of the minutes from January 25th, the budget workshop, the regular meeting, and the closed session meetings?
So moved. Second.
Is there any corrections, omissions, or deletions that anyone's aware of? Hearing none. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay, so before we do the report of the governing body members, we have some presentation and a resolution. We'll have to pass the resolution first, and then we're going to do a presentation to Dan and Daniel Bowersock. So, would someone like to make a motion to approve the first resolution?
Motion to approve. Second.
Would you call the roll?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
So tonight, as we normally do, we recognize individuals that have done some kind of outstanding achievement, heroic act. And in this case, this evening, we're talking about a heroic act. And so we have a resolution, and the Bowersocks are here that we want to present this resolution to them. Whereas the members of the Upper Township Committee are honored to recognize the heroic acts of Upper Township citizens Dan Bowersock and his son Daniel Bowersock of 5 Summers Avenue in Seaville, who were selfishly putting their own lives in danger to extinguish a fire at their neighbor's home. Whereas on a late night in November of 2015, shortly after the Freeze family of 2 Summers Avenue had retired for the evening, a vehicle parked in the driveway of their home became engulfed in flames and quickly ignited a portion of the Freeze-attached garage which contained oxygen bottles. As from across the street, Dan and son Daniel spotted the fire and quickly responded with a home fire extinguisher, effectively preventing the fire from spreading to the car's gas tank and an oxygen bottle in the back seat of the car. The Bowersocks, with their quick thinking and courageous response, certainly prevented the dangerous situation from becoming a tragedy. It is fitting and proper for the Township of Upper to honor the Bowersocks for their heroic deeds, and so therefore now be it resolved by the Township Committee of Upper that this committee expresses its sincere gratitude to Dan and Daniel Bowersocks for their heroic acts of bravery and commitment to the safety and security of their neighbors. So we would ask them to come up here so we can present that to them. And certainly a round of applause is fitting. Congratulations. It's the resolution. What I think we're going to do is take a few pictures.
This is Don Freeze and his wife whose house car fire down, whose car got on fire, including his house garage, which Dan took care of. So we can have the mayor in front.
All right, so I think Ted's going to give us,
I'll give you some preliminary instructions on this picture, so we have some organization, if you all don't mind. If we can have the committee members stand in the rear of Dan and the mayor, please. Dan, Danny, Dan, Don, Mayor. Up front here between these two, please. And the committee members in between, back there, please, so we can get all in here.
Ed's a wheel back there, so we don't want to block his little shirt.
I feel like I'm in high school here, directing students. Let's see here.
Can't see you in your head.
You can't
Sheriff,
see.
is that the problem?
No, Hobie, we got to get you more involved here.
Get you a
Why don't we
shoulder.
bring the power source?
Holly, why don't you switch slides, switch these back here, and go out just a little bit.
We have a step
John.
stool for the, for the,
Danny, mayor's got to go over here a little bit to present it. Hold, give that to the mayor, please. Hold it, mayor, give it to him like this. So looking at the camera.
they get your award, not me.
All right, good. And I'd like you all to sign this before I leave.
What is? What's that?
Want to take my picture?
What?
Well, that's getting all this.
All right.
Just one more, please.
Your camera's not flashing, Ted, you know that? There you go.
Beautiful, thank
All
you.
right.
You're filming it, Ted? Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
You want to say anything? You're welcome to say, now's the time.
No, I mean, we're honored. It's nice to meet everyone. And it was more reflexive action that we did. And I give a tremendous amount of, when you talk about heroism and use the word heroic, I think more in terms of, military and our first responders and fire and police officers. So I give them a world of credit as well. So.
Well, I think really, it's what is really, I wouldn't say unique, because I think there are a lot of neighbors that would certainly rise to the occasion, have been given into the same kind of situation. So I think that's what makes this community such a great one to live in, that, people are watching out for one another's properties, and the event something should happen, that there's a quick response, more to take care of the individuals and not necessarily the property or anything like that. So, we certainly wish you the best, and those kind of things are things that we really do enjoy honoring and showing forth, because I think that is what makes our community very unique. So.
Absolutely. And committee members, this is Don Freeze, the neighbor who...
Our family would like to thank, obviously, Dan and Danny. We're fortunate. We have a great neighborhood and a great township, and how do you say thank you for saving the family and house? Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Mayor, if you can sign that before I leave, please.
Ted, you're like the pseudo mayor.
He's like a little man.
Thanks a lot. Stories.
Ted, may I be excused? He's the mayor. Thanks, good job.
John, if you can sign that.
Thanks, guys. Nice to see you. Thank you.
I'll get that laminated and give it to this president.
Hi, how are you?
How you doing?
Hey, Tim Bowers. Nice to see you. How you doing?
I know, I'm going to get this laminated. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Barbara, if you can sign that, I appreciate it.
You guys are welcome to go. I'm sure young Dan has some homework to do tonight. Yes, it looks like he just got back from school, so. See you guys. All right, you know what? Let's jump back to the report of the governing body. So Barbara, do you have anything for us this evening?
I just have one thing. I just wanted to remind everyone that township offices will be closed on February 15th for President's Day. And our next meeting will be February 22nd. Thank you.
Daniel?
Nothing at this time, but we do have a handful of contract negotiations and a personnel matter.
Oh, you know what, let's go back to the 15th. Do we know if are we going to have trash pickup that day? Does anybody know? I know that we've only covered some of the holidays, but is that something?
Not typically that day, we'll pick it up on the following day.
Okay, so we'll have that posted for the Stratton, those
Yes.
to get trash pickup on Monday?
Yes.
Okay. Daniel has closed session. Paul, what do you have for us today?
First, I just wanted to give the committee an update on that Maurice Jonas. The Public Works is continuing cleaning up from the storm. We're going around the township collecting brush. You know, there's a lot of wind damage, so we're out there making the collection through the township to pick up storm debris. You know, we're trying to give residents obviously time to get it out. You know, it happened during the weekend, so kind of, you know, trying to give everybody at least 2 weekends to get all the storm debris out. So we're asking everybody to get that out so we can get that cleaned up and accounted for. I've also been meeting with county and state OEM officials as well as FEMA, and you know, the start of the process for preliminary damage assessments and letting them know, you know, what damages and expenses we incurred during that storm. You know, so we're just continuing that process. The Beachville regarding that, they actually went back and were touching up some areas in the north end. They started over the weekend touching up some of those areas, so you know, we lost some
Tell them
sand.
to take their time because we have high tides going on right now as well, so.
Yeah, they say there's a pretty bad storm out at sea right now.
The tides were higher than we thought today in Strathmere. We have tonight's tide, and then I'm really somewhat more concerned about tomorrow's tide because that, depending on where that low that they say is going to develop offshore. I mean, you know, obviously the weather forecasts are all over the place. I've seen 1 inch, I've seen a ½ inch, I've seen 6 inches. You know, I don't think they really know, but because it's a new moon, the tides are high to begin with, and any type of low that's going to further exacerbate the problem seems to be happening. So, like I said, please keep those beach replenishment people on track and on base until we get through these storms.
Yeah.
They're doing a pretty good job. I was down there the other day, they're dumping a lot of sand back on the beach. Be interesting to see what the inlet's gonna be like too.
And then the other thing I would ask is that we have one employee in our Public Works Department that's been doing a real outstanding job and really taking on a lot of extra duties. And you know, we like to try to keep him moving forward in a positive direction. And I would recommend John Adams to get promoted to a maintenance worker status number 3. That would require not only an ordinance change, you know, resolution for the promotion, but also a salary ordinance and personnel general ordinance revision section, because that would be a new title for a promotional title. He's currently at grounds number 2 worker.
We need a motion.
Need a motion for it?
Yeah, just to, you know, kind of reinforce what the request. John has really stepped up his game and taken control of a lot of the things we're doing up there. And, yeah, I think it'd be good to bring him up to a level where he can be running some of the crews and doing different things. So, he definitely, it's warranted and been well earned, so.
And that title, you know, along with what he's been doing, would be like a foreman, supervisor level title to move him up.
So you can probably have a motion to direct us to prepare the appropriate resolutions and ordinances so that you can effectuate the action if that's what you want to do.
I would make that motion, for us to direct whatever changes we need to make and give John this promotion.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Let's go to roll.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Aaron Colombo?
Yes.
Motion carried.
That's all I had for this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Barbara?
Nothing this evening, sir.
Okay. Mr. Coggins?
Nothing more this evening. Thank you.
Mr. Young,
Just one or two things. And again, thanks, Paul, for bringing that up, and I think it's a great move for us. The Easter egg hunt, we're having a meeting this week with it. We're not going to do a real big affair this year with vendors and everything. I think it's going to be more Easter egg hunts and characters. Try to get it down a little bit. And then concentrate on having two major events during the season. So I'll be posting what date we'll be having it on sometime this week. I'll let everybody know. And that's really about it. So, okay, quiet one tonight. Well, I'm sorry, we did get to front of Cobble Park. Anybody's been over there? The area between the fence and the road, we went over and took all the underbrush out, all the dead trees out. I had a conversation with Mr. Braverman, and he said to go ahead and do it. So I think it really limits the liability issue we had as well as the Braverman family, with all the dead trees aren't there. But security-wise, it really opened the park up now from Stagecoach, and you can see in it at nighttime. Before you couldn't see it at all. So just one of our little things we're doing to try to enhance our parks here. So great job by the crew that did it.
okay, good. Mr. Barr,
Nothing to report, sir.
we're really moving along here. We're going to set a record now. Mr. Pearson,
Just two quick things. Dog clinic, or I should say the vaccination clinic went well. We had 62 dogs, 37 cats, for a total of 99 animals. However, if we look at the last month's report and this one here, we have about 1,000 dogs registered. And we're only hitting about 250 animals between last time and now. So I'm hoping these other people.
but they don't have to be done every year, right? So.
No, something, I'm hoping they're.
Right, I mean, because I know that, like, I was looking at my two dogs, and they were done like a year ago, and they're not due until next year.
Correct, yeah. And a lot of people, what I was going to finish saying was, a lot of people get themselves vaccinated with their own vets, et cetera, and they incur some of the expenses. The other thing is that I went to 2 installation dinners with the Upper Township Rescue Squad and CEDO, and they're both well attended, and it's always good to see the young people being recognized for their service to the community, and awards that were won by I shouldn't say won, you don't win an award, it's awarded to you for your performance. And to see these young people step up and do the things they do after hours, 24/7, it's amazing. And I really appreciate their services. And the dinners were great, the music was great, and the food was great. Thank you very much.
Okay, I only have a couple things. One, I want to thank everyone for their kind words, especially my colleagues for covering for me. I had throat surgery about a week ago. I'm recovering really nicely, but there were some meetings that needed to take place during that time, and everyone rose to the occasion and covered those that needed to be covered. So I'm on the road to mend, hopefully, and got the stitches out, so I'm doing fine. But thank you all for all your help. Secondly, and I thought this was appropriate to bring before the Township Committee, just so you're aware. We have been asked by the Ocean City after prom party to request that we send a couple beach patrol boats over. They want to use them for as decorations. I didn't, and also they want a lifeguard stand. So we'll have to get Public Works to bring it over. I didn't think it was a problem, but I thought I would bring it before you. And if we need an official vote, I'll make a motion to that effect that we allow a couple pieces of equipment to be used for the after prom party in Ocean City.
One second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay. So let's move on. We have a few more resolutions. We have a number of ordinances to review. You want to see the next resolution is honoring the memory of Dan Brady. We will probably, I'm hoping that we'll be able to present this to his wife. For those of you that don't know in the audience or aren't aware, Dan Brady passed away recently. He was a very active member of Upper Township. He served on the Upper Township School Board for 9 years, of which 3 years he was president. He was vice president of the Cape May School Board Association. He was a member of the New Jersey School Board Association. He was a long-time standing member of the planning board here in Upper. So he has a number of charitable organizations and numerous civic organizations he's been a member of. So we thought it would be fitting to honor him, especially for his service to Upper Township on the school board as well as the planning board. So would someone like to make a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved. Second?
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
You can take the next one, Barbara, please.
Item number 3, authorizing the execution of an NJDEP TWA1 application statements of consent form regarding 100 Putnam Avenue, Strathmere, Block 824, Lot 7.
Move the resolution. Second?
And Paul, this is the one that we normally do
This is-
so that they
yes.
could move forward with.
With the septic systems, and essentially we're looking at to make sure that what their proposal complies with all of our local rules and ordinances, and the plot plan that they've shown has, conforming structure and with a conforming setback. So that's essentially the review that we do, and it meets all of our regulations.
Okay. So would you call the roll, Barbara, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 4, under ordinances, public hearing and final adoption of ordinance number 1, 2016, an ordinance amending revised general ordinance, chapter 7 of the Code of Upper Township.
Before we act on this, I have to report that the county, we anticipated that the county would authorize the portion of this ordinance that deals with Tuckahoe Road, which is a county road. And procedurally, what they have to do is they have to review what we're doing and say, yes, it's our road, and you have the authority to adopt an ordinance to regulate it. In fact, it states that in the ordinance that we received that approval. However, the county's meeting where they're actually formally going to adopt that resolution isn't until tomorrow. I spoke with the mayor, and my suggestion is one of two things. Either you can open it up to the public, if someone from the public is here tonight to speak on it, they can speak on it, and then continue it to our next meeting so that we have the appropriate authority to adopt it, or you can just continue the hearing to the next meeting, but obviously if you do that, if someone's here tonight, they would have to come out again.
Yeah, so I would, certainly ask that we open it up to the public if someone would like to address it. Now's the time, and that would be as it's continued to the next meeting, what they've contributed or what they voiced opinion on the public hearing will be added to that as well, right?
So, motion to open it up to them.
So, I think at this time, we'll open it up if anyone from the public would like to address this ordinance. There are a couple things on this ordinance besides Tuckahoe Road. We're talking Mosquito Landing, a parking area, Tuckahoe Road, several different locations. So if anyone is here that came specifically to address to the committee at this public hearing, now's the time to do it. We will continue this to the next meeting so that we can at least follow what's happened down at the county level. If you would state your name and your address for the record.
Keith Jack, 44 States Ridge Road. Basically that intersection there, everybody knows here, there's been a couple accidents. Once the ordinance is passed, how does it get enforced?
It's to be enforced by the state police.
So in other words, if we call, they'll give them a ticket.
And there's someone parking there, they should come out and give them a
No,
ticket.
they'll park there. They've been parking there. They were parked there at the time of the last accident. By the time I got my sneakers on and got my jacket on, they had pulled their car back in their driveway. The fire department was there for 2 hours. 10 minutes after everything left, they put the car back in on there. That's what they are. That's what those people are there.
They have to get the signs up once the ordinance is adopted, because if there's no warning with the sign, that might be an issue, so the public works might have a time schedule for that.
So in other words, once the signs.
Once the signs are up and after it's adopted, then it's enforceable.
Call the state police and they will give them a ticket.
Yes, and probably the clerk's office should make a note that there might be a complaint on it and get them a copy of the ordinance so they're aware of it.
Okay, because there's been more than one. The cops have been to the house, to their house before.
Understand, but now they have authority to enforce it.
Just for Mr. Jack's application, it won't take long to get the signs together, right?
No.
Okay, so I would say let's anticipate, I'm not sure how my colleagues will vote, or I'm not sure what the public will bring, in a later period, although I don't anticipate it being that much of an issue, because this is really a public safety issue.
Yeah, because you can't see. If you're in a small car, especially where you cannot see.
Right. So my thinking is I would say go ahead and order the signs now in anticipation of it, and then we'll be ready to roll as soon as it happens. And then once the ordinance is in place, as Mr. Young said, then the state police will enforce the ordinance, and they have something to enforce, because of the ordinance.
Okay.
Anyone else on this particular issue? Okay, we'll close on the public hearing.
We have a motion to continue the public hearing to our next meeting on February, I believe, 22nd.
I move to continue.
And there'll be no further notice on the ordinance, but the announcement tonight, if you were interested in it, that's your notice to come back if you're still interested in it at the second public hearing.
Second.
I move.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Hobbs?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 5, introduction and first reading of ordinance number 2, 2016, an ordinance amending revised general ordinance, chapter 6, property maintenance of the Code of Upper Township to control invasive plants.
Motion to introduce.
And if we
Second.
introduce, if we could have a public hearing on March 7th, that'd be great.
Okay, there's a motion to introduce in a second, with the public hearing scheduled for March the 7th. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Hobbs?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 6, introduction and first reading of ordinance number 3, 2016, an ordinance adopting revised general ordinance, chapter 20 of the Code of Upper Township. And we choose to introduce this. We could have a public hearing again on March 7th.
We want to make sure when we schedule that public hearing that there's sufficient time for the planning board to review it and issue a confirmation that it's consistent with the master plan because it does affect zoning. I do believe they have a meeting in between as long as we can get this ordinance to them and we can get that report back by the 7th. We can do that. This, as you know, is the accessory apartment ordinance. It only affects existing accessory apartments in the commercial zones. It's for affordability to help us with our affordability plan. That's currently undergoing court review. And we anticipate that it's consistent with the master plan, but the statute requires us to refer to the plan board, particularly since it's been since 2008, since they initially recommended it.
And it is on the agenda for next week's plan
already.
For next week's plan board meeting.
We should still send a letter out asking formally for them to issue a consistency report. So if we can do it by the 3rd, the 7th, then that's fine. I just want to make sure there's enough time.
Yes.
Okay.
We need to motion to
Introduce, right?
Move to introduce.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Hobbs?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 7, final change order for the reconstruction of Bayview Drive.
Paul, you want to tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, this is a final change order. You would always do at the end of a project like this where, there are estimated quantities and as the contractor builds the project, at the end, it's just kind of an accounting of what was actually constructed out on the site. I actually do have one revision that when I sent this copy over to the contractor, there was a couple rounding errors based on my spreadsheet formulas and his spreadsheet formulas. So items number 8 and 14 on the change order that's before, was in your packet, will be taken off of that. So that changes the change order up to $2,530 or 8.32% of the total contract for all change orders involved.
What'll happen is, you make a motion that we put it on for a formal resolution at the next meeting. Otherwise, you're not approving it now.
And is this money that we're covering, or is there still part grant money?
This last little bit, we have utilized all the grant money and some reimbursement from New Jersey American, so this $2,500 would be coming out of our budget funds.
And how's that coming out of the 2016 budget?
I think,
A small portion of it is coming out of the 2016 budget, most of it is coming out of the 2015.
So it's a carryover?
yes,
Okay, and we've accounted for that in the budget line items?
yes.
Okay.
All right, so would someone like to make a motion to, or you need a motion to move forward with this,
Just
Dan?
move that we place on a resolution for next meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Would someone like to make a motion to pay the bills?
I hereby move that all claims submitted for payment at this meeting be approved and then incorporated into the full minutes of this meeting.
Second. Let's call the roll.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
There are a number of reports from the municipal departments, animal control, construction code, EMS department, municipal court, MUA report, tax collector, certificate of determination award issue of bond anticipation note, tax collector 2015 annual year-end report. They will be available tomorrow morning upon request at the clerk's office, but I'll make a motion that we receive these reports.
Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay, so at this time, we've reached the public comment portion of the meeting. Would anyone else like to address the Township Committee? Because now's the time to do it. Yes, sir.
Ted Pinkston, Strathmere. I'd like to talk a little bit about the township budget and bond. Just a few years ago, a different township committee, before we had the local purpose tax, when it came budget time, nobody wanted to be the one to implement a local purpose tax. So the last few years before we had one, every year, the budget was getting squeezed more and more. The actual spending, I think a couple of years in a row was, like one year was 100,000 less than the year before. At that time, I would label that township committee as fiscally conservative. Then things changed. I mean, once that threshold was breached, and we had a local purpose tax, and back then, I think the only bond was the beach fill, but then the township started bonding. And now I look at township committee, and what I read in the paper last week with the proposals and the spending that's being proposed, it's just, the one number in the paper was that we added what we want to bond, and what we're already going to spend, it would be 16 cents.
That's a school.
No, that's ours. And you know what, Ted, I think, you make some very good points. The problem is, and I have to be on the committee the first time that the local purpose tax was instituted, I believe I'm the only one here. We have posted the institution of the tax the local purpose tax, have been extremely frugal beyond that. The problem comes, though, that some of the repairs and some of the replacement of vehicles have been put aside in an effort to try and not have any kind of increase. In fact, last year we had no spending above what we had the year prior to that. And that becomes a really difficult challenge because, as you all know, health insurance goes up, regular insurance goes up for property. I'd like to say utilities go up, but they seem to be a little bit flattened because of what's going on with the oil world out there. But it's very difficult to maintain the exact budget that we've worked on over the years without looking at potential for having to raise it now and then. We have been, I think the committee as a whole has been incredibly frugal in trying to get to the point every year where we don't raise in any way the local purpose tax amount that individuals have to pay. But by doing that, we've fallen back on things that are normally addressed. And part of the big capital is for road repair. We really have looked kind of, I don't want to say the other way, we certainly were cognizant of it, but those kind of things need to be addressed, because if we don't address them now, it'll be more money in the future for whoever sits here and you ask the same question, 5 or even 8 years from now.
Well, I can understand the township using the bonds for big ticket items, such as road repaving or the beach fill, or when it was time to buy new trash trucks. Kind of what has happened now, it's like each committee member is like, can make more room in their budget by taking $10,000 and $15,000 items out of their budget and putting them over in the bond. Well, I mean, that's short-term fixes their budget, but in the long term hurts the township. In other words, before we weren't buying trucks out of bonds. We weren't buying $10,000 and $15,000 lawnmowers and stuff.
And again, I will tell you that we weren't buying trucks out of bonds, and we probably should have, because we had our entire fleet became very dilapidated and depleted. And I think that there was a culture that had been covered over for many years, and I was on I'm on my 19th year of committee. There were times when we were getting the allocations that we're supposed to get from the energy receipt tax, where we had sufficient funds to cover things, and we were making purchases, cash purchases, that no other community could ever think or dream of doing. And as budgets have been passed from the state, where our amount of allocation that we're supposed to get, which is somewhere around 10 to 11 million, and we honestly get 6.2 million. That's what we've been getting recently. We have used some of the money that we had in the past to cover some of these expenditures, but we have not probably done the best job in keeping our equipment up to where it needs to be. And that's why we're in a position of utilizing bonds at this point. And I'm not suggesting that we look at what other towns do, because there isn't a town out there that doesn't bond things now, because when you have a strap 2% increase that we operate by, that's all we can increase our budget. This year alone, just with salary increases and insurance and the day-to-day things that we normally operate with, we're at that 2% level without buying not one piece of equipment, not addressing one road, not doing anything that is a responsible part of what this township committee is supposed to do. I mean, it's easy if we say, you know what, we're not buying anything. And then 5 years from now, the township's going to be in worse shape, because the expenditures are going to cost that much more to replace or rebuild We can't just keep allocating a bond just for beach replenishment. I mean, it's certainly important in Strathmere for infrastructure and everything else that we're doing it for, but we have other responsibilities. This is a 65 square mile community that is very diverse in the different areas that we have here. And we do the best we can to address
But
each
you're
area.
getting around, this is the same trick the school board was trying to play a couple years ago. You're getting around the 2% cap by moving stuff over into a bond. You don't have the money to go out and get the things you want, so you push it over into a bond, so then you don't have to raise the taxes by more than 2%. But ultimately, you're spending a whole lot more. It's just a way of circumventing the cap.
Well, and we have also looked at, and this is something that I think needs to be considered. We have 2 outstanding bonds now, right? And the one we anticipate paying off next year. And so if we take some needed equipment now and bond it now, that becomes a part of that second. Listen, I have a great fear that we get to a point where we overextend ourselves. It's not you got a money tree just because you can borrow the money on a bond. We're doing this calculated, and Mr. Coggins has put a lot of time in working with Ms. Spiegel here to address and hopefully be able to pay off one bond and start anticipation of another, so that we are able to maintain the equipment and move forward. It's a different world that we live in, and we have different responsibilities. And quite frankly, the equipment that we're using, a lot of it actually costs more because of mandates. I mean, a lot of the things that we budget for OEM, a lot of the things we budget for the rescue squad are state statutory requirements that we didn't have to do in the past. Our whole court system, we're able to do shared services because we've invested what the state statute requires us to do. I mean, if you look at, we have, things to go in and out of to make sure that nobody has any contraband coming in here. We've updated our video things so that we're doing what's required by the courts, but we're ultimately working with that to also show these, township meetings for people to view. But it's very difficult in this day and age to be able to maintain equipment and upgrade infrastructure that needs to be addressed and still live within the budget. I mean, we operate on a very low amount of staff here. I mean, we have worked very hard. We have not replaced a number of individuals that have left through attrition.
Well, I mean, that's going on everywhere. I mean, if you look at Atlantic County, we're talking about furloughing county workers. You look at the next township to the south, they laid workers. A lot of public works I go to, they look like ghost towns. You can't, it just has to tighten up. I realize that it's not easy. When you go down the list of budget items, they're all worthwhile items. But you just can't keep saying, well, we need this, and turning around and pushing it on the taxpayer. Just as the township is limited in resources, so is the taxpayer. I mean, I don't have more money coming in this year, and yet my taxes are going to go up, my costs are going to go up. At some point, you just can't, it seems to me it's a little too easy to dump it on the taxpayer. It's hard to turn around to the department heads and say, you guys got to cut something. I mean, we had township committeemen that were proposing things that, like I wasn't in favor of cutting the zoning board or some of those types of proposals. But the spirit that we need to cut is an accurate one. And I think you need to turn to the department heads and say, you got to figure it out. 16 cents is a whole lot of money. And then in the paper, like township committeemen saying that we should approve all the capital expenditures that are being proposed. I mean, that's just, we can't afford to do that. You got to look at the taxpayer. You got to look at what's going on. Times have changed. I understand it's hard for the township. It's hard for the taxpayer too. And I just think you need to revisit it. You know, you can't use the fiscal conservative policies of a previous township committee that were being applauded as justification for now we gotta go spend. You know, it's kind of gotten like truck of the month club. I mean, all the talk about trash trucks and all, now we want more trash trucks. Like, you know, some of these proposals, you think, okay, well, I see they need this, so fine. And it was kind of that way with the trash truck. But now it just goes on. Now we need another trash truck, another trash truck. Like, how many trash trucks have we bought? How many do we need? And a lot of these proposals. Recreation is kind of the same way. I understood the lights that man the field and stuff and all. I mean, they were things that were promised. But at some point, you got to say, well, we just can't keep expanding recreation. There has to be limits. And you can't keep turning to the taxpayer. At some point, you got to make some cuts. You got to look at the department heads and make some cuts instead of looking at the taxpayers and making the tax increases.
Ted, I hear your comments and I take them to heart. However, you are at our second meeting of the budget and we really haven't finished the process. So,
well,
you know, I think give us some time. We're working through this. I think we know that there could be items and can be items that need to be cut, but this is only the second meeting. We haven't even really talked the capital items of any great venue except at our first meeting. So I think you'll see us cut some things, but you know, can we cut the whole list? I don't think so, but we cut a good portion of it.
Yeah, and we've been, I guess we're down, what, in the last 8 years, Paul? In 12 years, we're down like 10 guys, 12 guys that we didn't replace. And when you minimize your staff, you have to maximize your equipment. You can't have it both ways. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. So we, either buy the equipment to get the job done, or we have to hire more people, which I'd rather buy equipment than people at this point.
Yeah.
You know, but what they were saying, like Rich said, a lot of the equipment has become antiquated and in disrepair. Trash trucks, they rot out from the frames inside the dump bodies and everything. It's not something that we want to do, but it's been let go and now we've kind of made it up.
The one trash truck, there's a couple that are being requested, but the one is really a rear loader. And just today I got calls, we were over in Strathmere last week after Jonas, and there's a lot of material that needs to be picked up. Pick up, the dump truck, we use the truck to do that. And there's a significant amount of brush and things that have blown down in the township. So, even though it may not seem like a necessity, the day-to-day operations require some of these things. And again, one of the reasons, and I will still to this day say one of the big reasons why we switched to the automated trash thing is that we created a safer environment for our workers. We cut down having 3 men on the truck, not being out on the outside of the truck, not having individuals falling off the truck. So, we're also trying to upgrade, some vehicles that bring us up to, honestly, the 21st century where safety is addressed. I mean, we value our employees. We also look at how we are spending and why we're buying some of this capital equipment. Overall helps us from an insurance standpoint because our workman's comp claims have gone down significantly as we've put in some of this newer equipment. Not to say it was so unsafe in the past, it's just they've developed safer equipment now that addresses things like that. So, there's a lot of things that are going into this decision. And listen, ultimately the 5 of us are taxpayers too. And so we understand, what everybody's saying. I have a number of family members in this township, so, I'm certainly doing the best I can, for them as well. But I also know that if we don't address some of the needs we have now, the expenditure and the risk continue to go up as years go by. So, we're going to continue to be frugal, but we also need to address some issues that need to be addressed.
And we're still what, Barbara, 8% of your taxes is what comes to the township for all the functions we do? 8%.
The municipal component of the That's taxes collected.
Yeah, but
I don't know, I don't
2
know.
cents.
It's not even that high, I don't think. I think it's like 4%.
Well, we were six.
2 cent raise in the township budget costs me just as much as a 2 cent raise in the school budget.
Oh, yeah. But, you know, I would like to address the 16 cents. Just for the record, the 16 cent that I had discussed, and that did come out of my mouth, would be what it would cost us if we actually absorbed all of this capital into our budget. So, you know, it's bonding versus a 16 cent tax increase. So that's where the 16 cent.
And I understand that, I guess the part, just to say once again, I'm scared of all the things that are being taken out of the budget. It makes the budget increase a little smaller, when all you're doing is taking that out and putting it in the bond.
But we do have the expenditure for the bonds that we have to pay off. That becomes a part of the regular budget.
Sure.
That, so you know, it appears that we're taking out capital stuff, but understand there's still a huge principal payment that's in that budget that we have to pay the bond for.
But by law, you have to pay off, there's a useful life on each bond item. So you have to pay it down based upon that useful life under statutory requirements.
Right.
So they have to pay a certain amount of principal each year. That's why we're finishing some of the other bonds. Actually, I think you're ahead of schedule on some of them.
We are.
Just trying to find
One other question on another subject is just with the beach fills. There's, I mean, I was happy to see the dredge ended up filling at the north end of Strathmere for the third time. I mean, it's gone again today. You know, when you're just watching it, it's kind of hard to tell exactly what's happening. Like, I assume they pulled out today.
The storm, yes.
Storm coming.
But I mean, they were filling in the point, that's the third time now. That's wonderful, but I'm just kind of curious, how did that come about? I mean, I understood they came back the second time, which was great, but they actually came back a third time and did the point for the third time.
Well, the work wasn't until they completed, right? And that's why.
Well, no, actually, before Jonas, they were almost finishing up Strathmere. What the Army Corps is looking at is, and what they've kind of been directed from Congress and through the Sandy bill, was that as they do these projects, before they leave a project area, they want the project to be completed. So, you know, with this most recent, you know, I don't know if it's got the official disaster declaration, but, you know, we've had a major loss that most likely is going to be, you know, a declared storm. So they, you know, they're just, you know, the same reason why they came back and filled it from Joaquin, they're going to fill it from Jonas out of that same pot of money. This time has come a little bit quicker because of the restricted bird nesting season and having to, you know, if they had finished all of Sea Isle, did Ocean City, and tried to come back to Strathmere in turn, it would have been past the nesting bird season, and they wouldn't be able to come back to get the north end of Strathmere. So it's you know, a conversation piece between, you know, the township officials, state OEM, the Army Corps, and FEMA, and just making sure that, you know, we get a finished project at the completion of the project.
Okay, I guess part of my take was I was wondering if all my complaints before about the inlet almost seemed like they must have been pretty dead on, seeing as how they've now pumped it 3 times at the inlet. I mean, is there more to the story?
Jinx yourself, my friend. We have worked very hard to get it. I just think that in this particular case, in this particular year, with Jonas, that was the hurricane, right, Jonas? Oh, no, Joaquin. When Joaquin came by, you know, it's one of those things where it was luck of the draw, where the project hadn't been completed yet, and we had an opportunity to move forward, and because the initial allocated spot had, I don't know if it was used up, but I guess they decided that, you know, they've used a lot of that sand 2 miles off, wherever it was, that they would consider, you know, there was always a promise that the next time they came back, they were going to do the inlet, correct?
Yes.
So for the next replenishment, whenever that would be, 3 years or 5 years to bring the beaches back, the inlet was going to be done anyway. And And because this is their second time around technically, they kept to their word to use the inlet, and that's really why it took place.
And don't forget, the amount of sand they're using it, for this renourishment is but 20% of what the initial construction was, for volume. So, you're saying, hey, why couldn't they have just taken out of the inlet the first time? Is they did, the volume of sand wasn't there to do. Essentially they're doing a small renourishment out of the inlet. So that's why they're able to do it. And if this hadn't been a project under Sandy and it had been just a normal Army Corps project, they wouldn't have come back to refill it. It's only because this was a Sandy project that they came back to fill it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing that there's no one else that's going to address the Township Committee, we close the public portion of the meeting, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Coggins to lead us into executive session.
I hereby move that a resolution be incorporated into the minutes authorizing the Township Committee to enter into an executive session for the following matters pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act. Contract negotiation for tax appeal conflict of attorney. Contract negotiation for the collective bargaining unit and for the Germanio land exchange, and also personnel matters. I also include in my motion the estimated time and circumstances under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public as follows. It is anticipated that the matters discussed in closed session may be disclosed to the public upon the determination of the Township Committee that the public interest will no longer be served by such confidentiality. With respect to contract negotiations, such matters will be made public when negotiations have ceased and there is no longer a reason for confidentiality. With respect to employment personnel matters, such discussions will be made public if and when formal action is taken or when the individuals involved consent that it can be made public.
Second, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Falcon?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.